At 18 years old, I'm on the brink of starting college in 4 months, yet I find myself caught in a distressing family drama concerning my college fund. This fund wasn't just any savings. It was a generous amount meticulously set aside by my late grandparents specifically for my education. Unfortunately, my parents have decided to divert this fund to help my older sister, Isla, 27, and her boyfriend, 29, purchase a house. Isla has always been the golden child in our family, receiving an abundance of support and attention from our parents, unlike me. Growing up, I noticed the disparity in how we were treated, but it became painfully apparent as I got older. I accepted this imbalance largely because there wasn't much I could do about it. Our family isn't large, and with relatives scattered across different states, I had few allies. 5 years ago, I lost my grandfather, and last year, my grandmother passed away as well. They had crafted a joint will, which disclosed that I was to receive a substantial amount meant for my education only after both had passed. The will was clear and fair. My parents inherited the estate, Isla received all the jewelry, and I was allotted the college fund. My grandparents lived well and believed in equitable distribution. However, since I'm not yet 20, the control over these funds was temporarily given to my parents. My grandparents undoubtedly trusted my parents to manage this trust responsibly, not knowing the underlying familial tensions. Externally, we might have appeared as the ideal family, but the reality was quite different, with a clear preference for Isla over me. This bias was something my grandparents didn't see, and I never felt it necessary to reveal the strained dynamics at home. When I recently inquired about the college fund, having started my college application process, I discovered that my parents had used the money to assist Isla in buying a house. This revelation came as a shock, and when I confronted my parents, they dismissed my threats of legal action humorously, questioning how I would finance such a move. Caught in this predicament, I felt powerless but determined to address the injustice. My story is about navigating these complex family dynamics, confronting betrayal, and striving to claim what is rightfully mine. I needed to secure my spot in college. Initially, my parents assured me we would discuss my college funding when the time came and encouraged me to relax for the time being. Despite this reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were withholding something important from me. After persistently asking them for the truth, they finally revealed that they had transferred all my college funds to my sister, Isla, to help her buy a house with her boyfriend. Isla is an engineer teacher, and her boyfriend is a pet store. Their combined incomes don't allow for much financial flexibility, yet they aim to purchase an upscale home in a desirable neighborhood, viewing it as a vital, long-term investment. Personally, I felt that if they couldn't comfortably afford a house at the moment, they should continue renting until they could finance a home on their own. It seemed unreasonable and unfair that they would use the money intended for my education. When my parents disclosed what they had done with the funds, I was infuriated. I demanded the immediate return of the money, recalling the exact sum that had been promised to me for my education, a significant amount that would cover all my college expenses. Overwhelmed with emotion, I ended up having a huge argument with my parents, during which I expressed my anger and frustration vehemently, but to no avail. My parents remained firm in their decision, justifying it by stating that Isla needed the support more immediately and that it was only fair for me to earn my way through college, just as others in the family had done. They refused to reconsider, even when I suggested other potential solutions, like selling other assets bequeathed to Isla and our grandparents to fund her house purchase. Their dismissive attitude and lack of regret for their decision left me devastated and feeling betrayed. I even considered legal action as a last resort, feeling that they had failed in their duty to safeguard my college funds. The entire situation felt dismissive and incredibly unfair, and it was clear that any further attempts to persuade them would be futile. When I turned 20, I was finally old enough to make my own decisions, but I felt utterly powerless. I was completely dependent on my parents, who, though not violent, were emotionally distant. The day they laughed off my questions about finances, asking me mockingly, with what money, was a painfully humiliating reminder of my dependency. This realization pushed me to reconsider my silence about their treatment towards me. I had never shared with anyone in the family how I felt. They weren't overtly abusive, just attached, and I feared worse treatment if I spoke up. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder if things might have been different if my grandparents had known the truth about how my parents treated me. After a particularly sharp argument that underscored their disdain, I decided I couldn't stay any longer. I had been saving money from a part-time job and, without a clear plan, I chose to leave home. I was prepared to sleep on park benches if it meant not having to endure their coldness any longer. I also resolved to break my silence and seek help from family members, despite not being close to them. This turned out to be a wise decision. I packed what I could, left home, and went straight to my best friend's house. Her parents, understanding my plight, offered me a place to stay. That night, I reached out to some of my dad's cousins for support. One of my uncles, a respected older captain, responded. He didn't promise immediate solutions, but assured me he would handle the situation. In the meantime, I would need to stay away from my parents, which I was already doing. Knowing he was on my side was a tremendous relief and gave me hope that things might change for the better. After spending several hours alone with my thoughts, the evening brought a surge of calls and messages on my phone, all from my parents. Although I ignored their calls, I did read the messages they sent. It turned out that my uncle, true to his promise, had contacted a lawyer to initiate legal action against my parents for misusing funds meant for my education, as specified in my grandparents' will. The messages from my parents were filled with pleas for me to reconsider. They claimed they would take responsibility for my tuition fees if only I would speak to my uncle to dissuade him from pursuing the lawsuit. They expressed regret over their actions, explaining that they had already given the money to my sister, Isla, who was about to buy a house she loved. They argued that it would be cruel to ask for the money back from her now, promising instead to cover my college expenses themselves. All they needed was for me to convince my uncle to drop the case. My uncle had already told my parents he was serious about taking legal action, having discussed this with a lawyer who was also a family friend, and he intended to ensure they paid for their actions. My parents sounded genuinely concerned over the potential consequences. Feeling a mixture of frustration and curiosity, I decided to call them. I didn't have a clear plan on what to say. I just wanted to hear them out one last time. They answered immediately, pouring out apologies and explanations, admitting they had been under stress and regretted not taking my feelings more seriously. They confessed they had always felt distant from me but begged for one last chance to make things right. However, they maintained that asking Isla to return the money was something they couldn't do, as it would be too harsh on her. This conversation clarified their priorities clearly. Their inability to prioritize my needs over Isla's indicated to me that their patterns were unlikely to change. I ended the call resolved not to intervene with my uncle's plans. Their actions had shown me where I stood, and it was time for me to stand firm. 5 days ago, I decided that I wanted my money back, fully aware that Isla had not yet completed her house purchase, and the funds were still untouched. Since making that decision, I've avoided contact and even blocked them during a heated moment, although I later regretted some harsh words I had said. Throughout this ordeal, my uncle has been a steadfast ally. We keep our conversations brief and to the point, mainly because he's already doing so much for me, and I don't want to burden him with my doubts about suing my parents, especially after their recent offer to fund my college tuition. And I've resolved to reclaim my money. The settlement my parents proposed doesn't sit well with me, primarily because I don't trust their intentions. Their offer to cover my tuition and other expenses semester by semester pales in comparison to having complete control over the funds my grandparents left me. With this money, I could potentially cover my education without depleting the entire sum, especially if I secure a scholarship, leaving me with some savings. Accepting their offer would mean starting from scratch financially after graduation, without any fallback. Despite maintaining regular contact with my uncle and recently asking him for additional financial support to move out of my best friend's house, where I felt I was overstaying my welcome, I've chosen not to disclose my ongoing concerns to him. My best friend and her family, despite the added strain of my presence and their own busy household, have been nothing but supportive. Yet, I feel it's time for me to move on and not impose further. Some people have criticized me for feeling entitled to this money, suggesting I should either work through college or take out loans like most do. But given the circumstances of my family's promises and the assets left by my grandparents, I believe it is not only my right but also my responsibility to manage these funds wisely and ensure my educational and financial future. I am simply pursuing what rightfully belongs to me. My grandparents set aside a college fund specifically for me to ensure that I wouldn't need to explore other, less desirable financial avenues like many do. I don't believe it's entitled to assert my right to this fund. In fact, it seems more entitled of my parents to divert these funds to my sister so she could purchase a house beyond her means. This, despite them also inheriting money from my grandparents. Moreover, my grandparents on my mother's side are still alive and could have provided financial assistance if truly necessary. My maternal grandfather recently labeled me a brat and entitled in an email after learning from my mother that my uncle was aiding me in legally challenging my parents. I chose to block that email address without responding. My relationship with my maternal grandparents has never been close, and I see no value in their attempts to impart lessons or morals, which I perceive as merely echoes of my parents' sentiments aimed at undermining me. Meanwhile, my uncle advises me to concentrate on my studies and securing the scholarship I aspire to. He handles the legal matters. This arrangement spares me constant worry and allows me to focus on my academic and personal growth. My uncle, whom I trust completely, seems to understand the need for this and stands by me, a rare ally in my current situation. As I prepare to start college and leave these familial conflicts behind, I find solace in the fact that these challenges are only temporary. Recently, I moved into an apartment arranged by my uncle, where I share space with an older, understanding roommate. While my uncle covers the rent, he encourages me to pay for my own groceries to learn financial responsibility. I appreciate his belief in my ability to manage my finances, as I do have some savings and a part-time job. This setup not only helps me prepare for the future, but also gives me a sense of independence and control over my life. Despite his significant efforts on my behalf, I believe what he's asking me to handle is quite manageable. Regarding the ongoing lawsuit, he's been transparent, updating me whenever necessary. My parents have received the legal notices and are prepared to negotiate. Currently, we're engaged in mediation sessions, although this might escalate to a court battle if an agreement isn't reached. My parents appear eager to resolve this before it goes to trial, and our lawyer is optimistic that we can recover the full amount very soon. We had to opt for a virtual mediation session due to our tight schedules, which suited me fine as I preferred not to meet my parents in person. Throughout the session, my parents were visibly anxious, readily conceding their mistakes. They even revisited their initial offer to fund my college education, but I firmly rejected this. My stance was clear. I simply wanted my savings returned, and they had no right to challenge this decision. After some disagreement, they proposed another mediation session in a few days, and my lawyer anticipates a resolution then. I'm confident that neither Isla nor my parents will misuse the funds during this brief period. They understand the consequences this could bring. Speaking of Isla, I do feel a bit of sympathy for her. She has been vocal about her dream of homeownership, frequently discussing her plans to buy and decorate a house. It's unfortunate she won't realize this dream now, but she should not have accepted the funds if she couldn't afford them independently. Despite our rocky history, I don't harbor any resentment towards Isla. We've grown out of our childhood squabbles and have been quite amicable in recent years. We haven't spoken since I moved out, and I'm not sure she knew that our parents were using my college savings to support her housing dreams. She hasn't cut communication with me, so I assume she was unaware, but she'll soon learn the truth when our parents request the funds back. Navigating this period of my life hasn't been straightforward, especially dealing with family issues that could easily be attributed to my parents. It's painful to dwell on it, so I'm shifting my focus to my college journey instead. I've been fortunate to receive acceptance letters from several universities, but I'm anxiously awaiting a response from my top choice, where I hope to secure a scholarship. Even without the scholarship, I'd be content. I just need to know where I stand. Currently, I'm on the wait list, but remaining hopeful. The college's location is ideal as it's near my uncle's place, just a 4-hour drive. Lately, we've been spending more time together. His children are all grown up and busy, so it works out well for both of us. He's become a kind of father figure to me, especially since he recently offered me a place to stay during semester breaks. His rough exterior belies a genuine warmth, which was evident when he extended the invitation, which I gladly accepted. On another positive note, my parents have agreed to return the funds they had taken, which were intended for my college. My uncle, my lawyer, and I are pleased with this resolution. Additionally, my sister Isla reached out to apologize after learning what had happened. She was under the impression that our parents were helping her with a home loan, not knowing the funds were originally for my education. Our relationship is neutral for now, but I'm open to the possibility of reconnecting more deeply in the future. As for college life, it's been fantastic so far. I started last month and have been quite busy. My roommate and I have hit it off, and the classes have been engaging. My uncle and aunt were instrumental in helping me move and settle in. Their support has been a cornerstone of my success, and I am profoundly grateful. I've also secured the scholarship at my preferred college, which means the financial legacy left by my grandparents will provide a solid foundation for my future. Life is looking up, and I'm eager to make the most of this new chapter, hoping to make my family proud.